What's up, YouTube? Are you looking for a drone that can splash down in the water? One of the world's first FPV drones that you can carry a GoPro on and supposedly splash down in the water. In this review today, we're going to take it out on the river and we're going to splash this drone in the water on purpose. Seems counterintuitive, but we're going to do it today in this review. We're going to fly out there amongst the geese and the birds, try to get away from these territorial Canadian geese over here. They will get you. They're sounding the alarm right now that we're here, so we're gonna avoid them, but we're gonna do some splashdown. I got the paddleboard and I have my wetsuit on just in case. It's 30 degrees outside, so yeah, it's December. Perfect time for an waterproof FPV drone review. This is the Darwin FPV Hulk on 6S with a GoPro on the front. Here we go. Enjoy the flight. So now you get to see maiden flight of the Darwin FPV Hulk. I'm running a 6S 1300 pack on this one, and this is going to be the longer flight, around 8 minutes. And whenever you're flying over the water, there's so many things that you have to look out for. If you're just watching this video for the first time, I'm going to give you some tips about flying over water that you might not have heard before. One of the biggest things is to go over the entire drone with a driver. Make sure all the bolts are tight. We've had this particular drone have a motor fly off of it and crash. These motors are not Loctited from the factory, so you want to use some blue Loctite on these motors before you go out for your first flight. They're only M2 bolts. I wish they were M3, but they are M2, so keep that in mind. And I'm really not knowing what to expect. I saw another reviewer crash theirs because of that bolt flying off, so I went over and made sure that all my motors were nice and secure. So many things that can happen over water, but with this one I have peace of mind. And I think the holy grail for most of us when we're flying over water is just that epic low to the water shot that we all want. And sometimes it's hard to tell how close to the water you are, and you end up crashing your drone right into the water. It happens all the time, but that epic low to the water shot shows the speed and how powerful these drones really are. And that's what's so cool about it for me. But Loctite these motors, make sure all the bolts are tight, and you should have a nice first maiden flight. And it handles the GoPro well. I feel like it will freestyle even over the water. I'm not worried about it. And let's just try that real quick. Just go up and over this tree and back down to the water. There's a thing called bottoming out, which does happen with sometimes doing a freestyle maneuver, coming back down to the ground. You crash into the ground, you don't have enough power to get back up. But today we have plenty of power. Okay, so that was an uneventful flight over the water, and that's what you really want. You want to be able to come back home with your footage and not crash in the water. With this one, we're supposed to be able to crash in the water, but I had a few questions because I saw other YouTubers crashing into pools and sinking to the bottom with the first 2 stock floaties on there. So I put 2 additional floaties on there so that we could maybe get the GoPro Hero 810 out of the water and be able to use turtle mode with the extra floaties on there. So will that work? That's my big question. Let's go ahead and test it out. Okay, so I'm recording on the analog FPV. Man, it's so crazy to see that thing take off. I'm in acro mode, we're gonna dump it. All right, upside down. And it went way under earlier, but it did, all 4 of the floaties brought the GoPro Hero 10 back up out of the water, like from way under. So that's good news. So I'm gonna go ahead and put it in turtle mode, flip it. Wow, that's pretty violent. Okay. Take it out of acro mode. It's good to have stability mode on there just to get back up out of the water. Kind of helps. Now I'm back in acro mode. Let's go ahead and flip it a little closer up. Upside down. All right, now we're gonna go into turtle mode and let's flip it. Boom. All right, out of turtle mode. I'm in acro mode, now I'm in stability mode. That was pretty cool. Man, my GoPro's getting pushed around. All right, let's go ahead and smack it down again. Acro mode, flip it over. Boom. Inverted. Wow, it's still trying to spin. Okay, acro mode again. We're gonna dump it again. Here we go. Boom. All right, disarmed. Now turtle mode. Arm it again. That's freaking cool. Hope you guys are seeing that. Man, I trust that. I trust that. That's pretty cool. That is pretty cool. Wow. Okay. Color me impressed. That was pretty cool. Okay, so it didn't start out very good at first because I couldn't get it to flip back over, but once I was into turtle mode for real, rearming and just getting all that right, everything was fine. It would flip back over. It went way under one time with the Hero 10 on board, but with the extra pool noodle on there, put all 4 of them on there if you plan on flying any type of GoPro or action camera, Insta360 or any of the GoPro Hero 10, 11, whatever series. You need the extra flotation. Without it, with just 2, you're probably gonna sink to the bottom and lose your GoPro and your drone. So don't be that guy. Go ahead and put all 4 of these on there. You'll be good. But I think overall though, it was doing more than I expected, honestly. It's better than I expected. I didn't expect this drone to come out here and be able to turtle mode in the river. I didn't expect it to be able to survive today and still fire up and start up again. I secured everything extra with some extra hot glue on there as well. I even covered up where the solder joints to the ESCs are just because I was paranoid. I know they're conformal coated from the factory, and also my crossfire receiver, I put tons of hot glue on that just to make sure that I didn't short that out, and everything is good on here. So yeah, is this worth the $400? If you fly around water, it is. Yeah. So anyway, guys, let's go ahead and take a look at it on the bench, a little closer up. Short review on this guy, and then I'll give you my final opinion on one of the world's first waterproof FPV drones. Not the world's first, but one of the first. Here we go. All right, guys, that was so much fun. This episode has really been a lot of fun for me. I had serious doubts with this quad going into the water and surviving. Just give you a little background history on Darwin FPV. This is a company that makes things on the super cheap, and super cheap makes me a little scared of dipping it in the water. However, this company's come a long way, mainly because they have a huge following as far as people buying their stuff. So they have secured more funding since they have sold so many of the tiny apes and the baby ape collection. If you've never seen those, they also make a 7-inch drone as well. So now this one is their first waterproof FPV drone. It starts out for analog system. You can get it in the 4S or 6S version. It starts around $369 on their website. So you also can get different floaty colors. You can get green, red, yellow, blue, purple, and they say that an 03 version is coming, DJI 03 with 4K onboard stabilized footage and 1080p FPV is coming down the pipes. So I thought that was really, really cool to hear. Now, how they're going to encase a 4K DVR inside something that's a waterproof frame, that's yet to be determined. And I'm wondering if that can actually physically happen because of how hot the 4K DVR gets. With 4K DVR and analogs, or even an HD VTX slammed right together, that creates a lot of heat in one small package. So it's kind of a feat of science that they can make that work. But I have 4 noodles on here for my GoPro Hero 10 on board. And this is the best way to make sure that you don't lose your GoPro. If you're going to fly this over water with a GoPro, I highly recommend that you use the extra 2 noodles that are in the box. And what I thought was super cool about the Hulk is that when it did go inverted, and this thing's still wet, you guys, when it did go inverted in the water, even with the weight of the GoPro, this thing is able to turtle mode itself back over. And, you know, with a 6S 1300 or 1050 battery on board, that's enough power. It was almost violent, in fact, watching it snap back over in the water. It really has tons of power to be able to right itself back with the motors inverted again down into the water, submerged, and take right off out of the water. I had seen other versions of waterproof FPV drones in the past.
where the motors are reversed. They're on top. So once you invert and get back to vertical takeoff, the motors are on top instead of inverted. So these motors are submerged and they're still able to take off out of the water, which I think that's super cool. So I was impressed with that, and it's kind of fun to watch it actually do that. Now, one other point during this review, when I was filming with this, I thought that my FPV camera got water inside it, so I thought there might be a leak here somewhere, and I was actually wrong. So that's good news. I just wiped it clean with my jacket, and I went back to being able to fully see. So no camera compromise there with water. The GoPro Hero unit held up. That works pretty nice. I can't get a real big tilt on that because it hits the carbon frame back here. So one thing to note, that you can only get about, I'd say about maybe around 25 degrees tilt for your Hero 10. So if you're doing some kind of extreme freestyle and you want like 35 degrees, I don't know if you're going to be able to get that, but I'm happy that I had plenty of room. I put my receiver on top here, and this is the VTX on the very top of it, which is also inside its own anodized aluminum case, so everything's waterproof there. I covered front to back my receiver with hot glue, all of the holes there, and if there's one single pinhole, your receiver may be compromised. So one thing to look out for there. Now as well, my ESCs, I wanted to leave them open where they're soldered down, but I was a little worried about that. I know they're conformal coated, and you can kind of see that I actually put hot glue on top of them just as an extra safeguard, because when you're talking about water and electronic components, I don't trust it. Don't trust it. Double, triple check. I mean, even cover over some of the hot glue that they have on top of this flight controller. Now, it's an F4 flight controller that they have on here. It's not an F7. I wish it was, but it's an F4, and that's going to be good enough for most of the type of flying you're going to do with this drone. And what kind of drone is this? This is a cruiser. You can dive trees with it, even with the GoPro on it. I did some maneuvers over the river where, in other instances, if you had a battery sag out on a tall tree dive down toward the water, that's kind of a maneuver that a lot of people won't do because they're afraid they're going to bottom out. If you bottom out over the river, you're going into the water, right? So that was one thing I was worried about. But you can also put GPS on here. Some of you guys might want to know that. You are able to put GPS on this flight controller, which is super cool. This battery strap on the bottom will also accommodate up to about a 1550 6S battery. We have sort of a TPU mount back here, and the way the top comes off as well, it's just 4 bolts, 4 M3 screws, and it's sort of a hatchback, so it'll go forward or backwards, or you can take them all off. But you're going to have your built-in SPI ELRS receiver antenna right here, which is plugged into the flight controller back here. So that's going to be kind of hanging off there. You can open this up, I believe, and probably take that SPI RX off there if you're going to use Crossfire. But once you set it up in Betaflight for CORX, it's going to disable that because you're not going to be using Express ELRS. This is our antenna back here. This is the UFO. I've seen this before. This is the analog VTX antenna, and we've also got a TPU mount back there. And it looks like about 2 millimeter side plates for the top of the carbon frame, and really good camera protection up front. See that? That's tons of protection there. And we have a super awesome aluminum casing around the whole FPV camera. We got a little bumper down here, and they give you this battery protector as well. So you can put this on the bottom of your battery. And once you put your battery on here, what that does is it gives you a little extra height, because you have these downward facing motors, and you kind of need something to give you a little bit of extra height. And this is super cool. It also gives you a little extra battery protection for when you come in and you're landing on the side of a river or somewhere like that. Say you're landing in the rocks, or you're landing just on concrete. When you bounce down, it's going to protect the bottom of your battery. So that's nice to have on there. Now the motors themselves are Hulk branded motors. These are Darwin FPV Hulk motors, and they're 2204, and these are the 1750 kV 6S motors. There's also a 4S motor version, but I would get the 6S motor if I were you. Now mounting this motor on here, we have 3 M2 bolts. I'm not sure why they're not M3 bolts, but they are M2 bolts, and there is no Loctite on them. I saw another reviewer have one of these motors fly off. And if that happens to you and you crash in the water, guess what? You're not going to be able to take back off out of the water. So my suggestion to you guys is to highly get some blue Loctite, dip the tip of the bolt in there, and make sure to use some Loctite for your motors. And also go over the whole quad itself when you get it with an M2 driver and an M3 driver. Make sure all the bolts all the way around this quad are nice and tight, because a lot of times from China, stuff doesn't come completely tightened down. Don't over tighten things, but then again, you want to make sure that things are nice and tight before you go out on your first flight. Now, one of the biggest issues about a waterproof FPV drone is the fact that when it does go down in the water, this antenna is going to be submerged, and when it goes underwater, 5.8G doesn't really penetrate water all that well, and a lot of times you're going to lose VTX receiver back to your goggles. So you're going to lose video back to your goggles. That's one thing that I would watch out for. If you're way down the river and you capsize in the water, you go down after you do some kind of maneuver, you lose video. Try to go ahead and put yourself in turtle mode and get it to flip back over. But if you're lucky, you can turtle mode it, flip it back over, and when it does flip back over, your video should come back, even if it's sitting on the surface of the water. That way you'll know to go ahead and flip out of turtle mode and take back off. And just to re-clarify, I'm just looking at the website now. The Darwin FPV Hulk AIO flight controller is $126. I might have said $116 earlier, but it's $126. The VTX itself, the 5.8 gig VTX at this time, it was $30. Now it's $29.10. Not a big difference. The camera itself is about $35, and they're about $20 per motor. So I think the prices on this one are, they're not super cheap. It is more of a specialty item, but I think that the fun factor here for me today, I came home really happy and excited about this one, because I can just, I get excited like a kid, because I'm like, oh my God, imagine all the adventures I could have with this thing. I could take this everywhere. I could fly it over water. I could do anything I want with it. It will freestyle even with pool noodles on here. It's kind of crazy. It flies a GoPro. Yeah, and it's analog. It's cheap FPV, and if you break something on here analog-wise, it's going to be a lot cheaper to replace than a DJI 03. So this is good news for analog flyers, and it actually does work in the water. So that's my biggest takeaway for you guys. And if you have any questions about this one, or you just want to make a comment, give me some props to this video, give us a like and a thumbs up and a share. Do subscribe as well, because I've got some more fun adventure stuff coming up on the channel. All kinds of cool stuff coming back into the channel all the time. So I'm going to give this 2 thumbs up. And I would say it's about a 4.6 out of 5 stars for me, because the fun factor is so high. Is it perfect? It's not perfect. Do I trust it? I don't trust any drone that goes in the water. I highly suggest you double coat everything with hot glue. And by the way, hot glue will pop back off your wires later if you need to remove hot glue. So I've done it before. Conformal coat things if you want to, if you don't want to use hot glue, but just literally apply it everywhere on the flight controller itself, and cover everything up, guys. This is just too much fun, and I do recommend this one. I do recommend it. If you live around water, you're on the coast, you want to film the coast, or go on a crazy vacation and get some wild over-the-water footage, this is the safest way to do that without losing everything you bring to the beach or the lake or the river. So have fun, guys. I appreciate you watching. Again, please do subscribe. I'm Justin Davis. I'll see you on the next adventure.